Learning from bears. French workers enjoy a standard 35-hour work week. They like having more time to spend with their families. But is a short work week good for the country? Does it result in more jobs for the nation's workers? After the French Revolution, local leaders went out into the country and saw how people lived. They were surprised that most farmers did not work in the fields between autumn and spring. The farmers stayed in their homes and spent the cold months doing almost nothing. After working hard during the 5 months of warm weather, they were resting. By resting, they were preventing hunger. The whole family gathered around a warm stove, lay down, and went to sleep. Once a day, everyone got up to eat a piece of hard bread. Then they went back to sleep. The members of the family took turns keeping the fire burning. This was not hibernating like what bears do in the winter, but it was a sensible decision by the members of the family. Just stay in bed for as long as possible and do no work. To these French farmers, working more to earn more did not seem like a good idea. Instead of working throughout the year, the people of one village on the Rhone River made enough money for 1 year at their summer fair. They spent the rest of the year relaxing, hunting, and sleeping. Few people needed money until the 20th century. They needed money for salt and iron, but they got most other supplies through exchanging goods. There wasn't a great need to make money. This helps explain why one of the winter industries in the high mountains was clockmaking. Spending long hours working on tiny mechanisms was a way to make time pass faster. Juan the bear. Since the 1970s and 1980s, zoos around the world have tried to reproduce the natural environment of their animals. They have taken out hard concrete floors and steel bars. They have put in grass, trees, and pools of water. These environments seem more natural to humans, but what about the animals? It is true that the animals do not have to worry about finding food, shelter, or safety from enemies. All the necessities of life seem to be provided for them. While this may not seem like such a bad deal, the animals experience numerous problems. The zebras, for example, live in fear. They can smell the lions in the nearby Great Cats exhibit every day, and they are completely unable to escape. There is no possibility of moving to a safer place. Moreover, zoo animals cannot gather food for the winter. This must make the birds and animals feel they will die before long. They get food today, but they have no way of knowing whether food will appear again tomorrow. They have no way to get food for themselves. In short, zoo life is completely unnatural from the animal's point of view. Animals in zoos have almost no control over their own lives. In spite of the efforts of their human caretakers, animals in zoos may feel caught in a death trap. They are surrounded by walls, nets, moats, and glass. Every year, some animals try to escape. Some of them succeed. In 2004, at the Berlin Zoo, there was a bear named Juan. This smart bear rode on a log across the moat surrounding his habitat. He then climbed a wall to freedom. He took a ride on the zoo's merry-go-round. He enjoyed going down the slide. But eventually he was tranquilized by zoo officials and returned to his habitat. GDP Man. Each of us has an idea of what progress looks like. For some of us, it is a new place to live. For others, it is a new television or a trip abroad. For most governments around the world, however, progress is measured by just one statistic: gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP includes how many goods companies produce, how much food farmers produce, and how many new buildings builders put up. As a country's GDP rises, some people think the lifestyle of the people gets better. But not everyone agrees with this way of thinking. A higher GDP does not necessarily mean that the people of a country are happier or enjoying life more. A new, different way of measuring progress compares two categories of people: high GDP man and low GDP man. High GDP man has a long commute to work. He spends a lot of money on transportation between his home and his office. The stresses of his commute are not good for his heart or for his car if he drives. He works hard, spends a lot, and often goes to bars and restaurants. He and his wife both work, so they have to find someone to take care of their children. He and his wife are usually too busy to take long vacations. In contrast, low GDP man spends a lot of time cooking, cleaning, and taking care of his house. He grows some of his own vegetables. He borrows books from his local library instead of buying them. He eats at home and spends more time with his family. He exercises by doing housework rather than paying to belong to a gym. In terms of economic measures, high GDP man is better off. But we cannot really be sure whether his life is any better. In terms of quality of life, low GDP man may be both happier and healthier. The camera thief. A group of researchers wanted to record the movements of crocodiles in a river in Australia. To do this, they set up a small video camera along the edge of the river. It had a small motion sensor. When something moved in front of the lens, the video turned on. When the researchers later went to check on the camera, however, the camera had disappeared. They guessed that it had fallen into the water and been washed away. After several months, someone found the camera, 110 kilometers away, and returned it to the research group. The researchers decided to look at the video. They were able to see 3 30-second sections. They could hardly believe their eyes. On several occasions, one of their cameras had been moved by a wild animal. But this time was different. The film showed interesting scenery from high in the sky. After examining the film, the group discovered how the camera had disappeared. They also found out who the thief was. The film showed the wings of a bird as it grabbed the camera and took off. It showed short views of the land and the sky during its long journey. And then it showed the thief. It was a sea eagle. But there was another mystery. Why did the sea eagle carry the camera for such a long distance? Sea eagles usually take what they catch, fly up into the sky, and drop it. Dropping it to the ground softens it and makes it easier to eat. The research group guessed that this bird was young and still learning how to do things. It caught the camera and carried it away, but didn't drop it. When it put the camera down, it started picking at it. When it did, it took a picture of itself. The new breadwinner. Until recently, the husband was usually the breadwinner of the American family. But increasingly, it is the wife who earns more than half of the income of a family. According to one study, in families in the top fifth of income categories, about 34% of the breadwinners are women. In the bottom fifth, however, close to 70% have women as the breadwinner. Not all of these women are breadwinners by choice. In many cases, restructuring and a continuing poor economy have taken jobs from men. As a result, women have had to go to work in order to support their families. These women breadwinners are likely to keep separate bank accounts. They also have a bank account that their husbands do not know about. But when it comes to making decisions, many women let their husband take the leading role. In other words, they try to support the image of the strong husband. The change in who is the breadwinner is not entirely surprising. For one thing, these days more than half of those who graduate from college are women. Second, women now make up 50% of the workforce. Third, close to 40% of women in the workforce were never married or are no longer married. It is only natural that they are breadwinners. Is this the end of men as the stronger half of the family? Are strong males giving way to strong females? Most American men who are now working were raised in the generation after the women's movement. They grew up in a culture that emphasized the values of gender equality. It doesn't bother them that their wives earn more income. But many men still want their own salary to be enough to support their family. These men may feel helpless. They may even feel ashamed that they are not the main breadwinner. Keeping an eye on you. Everywhere we go, we are being watched. Security cameras record us in meeting rooms, restaurants, and subway stations. These cameras are set up to protect people and prevent crimes. In stores, cameras are used to prevent stealing and to record attempts to steal money from the cash register. Now those same cameras are serving another purpose. They are watching how we shop. They record how many people enter a store each hour it is open. Managers can use this data to make staff schedules. When crowds come, the managers can be sure that there will be enough salespeople to serve them. Cameras in some shops are able to determine customers' ethnicity. Noticing that groups of tourists from one foreign country came in the shop at the same time every day, the manager posted sales staff who could speak their language. Cameras also observe what products we look at and how we move through the store. Managers use this data to decide where to place goods on shelves and how to attract the customer's attention. Some stores have installed widescreen monitors to show floor plans and advertisements for special sale items. Behind each monitor is a camera which notes eye movement. The camera tries to determine the viewer's gender and age group. On the basis of this data, the screen then changes to show advertisements for products that the person might like. Recently, some stores track signals from cell phones. They can find out how many people walking by their store actually come in. They can count how many minutes a person stays in the store, too. Although the store managers do not know who owns the phone, they do know how frequently the phone and its owner enters the store. In other words, they can recognize repeat customers. Shop managers find this information very helpful for their business. Revolution in color. The revolution in the use of colors has not been carefully studied for several reasons. First, the color revolution is something that has happened in the business world. Second, people who study design often focus on the actual products that make everyday life more comfortable and convenient. Or they focus on modern ideas of what is beautiful or useful. These researchers have not paid much attention to the revolution in the use of color itself. Professional colorists have mostly worked behind closed doors with other specialists. Few people see what they do. But what they have done has shaped our environment in many ways. Consumer products from children's toys to laptop computers to cute cars have come directly from their ideas. They have helped schools, car manufacturers, and telephone engineers master the various effects of color. They have worked to make houses feel warm and comfortable. They have studied how to make office space and classrooms safe and ideal for reading and working. They have developed attractive clothing that brings customers into department stores. Among the first colorists were people who used their artistic talents during World War I. They used color and illusion to develop camouflage to hide weapons and soldiers. After the war, some of these colorists worked in the auto industry. They used color to make cars look slimmer, faster, and more streamlined. They also selected colors that buyers would want to buy. Each industry has its own share of professional colorists who study market surveys and sales reports. They look at data to see which colors are popular on packages and on the products themselves. They study human psychology to learn what combinations and patterns of color attract the eye and make a person want to buy a product. And they make efforts to predict which colors will become popular in the years to come. Under the sea. Submarines carrying large crews and sophisticated instruments travel around the world under the surface of the sea. Now they have small, silent companions called sea gliders. Hundreds of these unmanned vessels are currently at work. The typical sea glider looks like a rocket. Its small wings guide it through the water. It travels very slowly at less than 1 kilometer per hour. It uses an extremely small amount of power. As a result, it can stay out in the ocean for months at a time. In 2009, a glider used a single battery charge to travel across the Atlantic Ocean. It took 7 months to go across. Sea gliders are already helping scientists do many things that were not possible before. These vessels can watch underwater volcanoes. They can measure the size of an iceberg. They can follow a school of fish. They can track the effects of pollution in water at various depths. Scientists are beginning to use them to create maps of the ocean floor. Gliders are already able to carry out missions that last several months. But now a researcher in Japan is at work on a solar-powered glider called Sora. This vessel rises to the surface for a few days to recharge, then continues its work. As a result, it can stay at sea for years if necessary. Currently, sea gliders cost about $150,000 to produce. But that cost is very small considering what they can do. Businesses can use them to survey the ocean floor to explore for oil and gas. Governments can use them to gather intelligence. Without being spotted, a glider can identify ships on the surface or manned submarines that pass near it. At present, the only enemies of the sea gliders are fishing nets and sharks. But if the number of these gliders increases, there may be a traffic jam at rush hour. The right sound. Designers are increasingly paying attention to making products that make less noise. Steve Jobs, for example, did not want to use a fan to cool his first computer. He thought a fan would make too much noise. Since then, there has been a broad movement to make products that are quieter. The reason for doing this is clear. Noise is a problem that affects us all. In 2011, the World Health Organization published a report on health and the environment. The main environmental cause of bad health is air pollution. The second cause is noise pollution. Making a quieter environment is good for people and for businesses too. Quieter cars, printers, washing machines, and airplanes may be more expensive, but these products consume less energy. That makes them cheaper to operate in the long run. Quieter airplanes, as one example, are better for everyone. People who live near airports are happier when noise decreases. People who fly on quieter planes find traveling less stressful too. In the workplace, machinery and air conditioning that is quieter may be a bit more expensive, but it increases concentration and reduces fatigue. In general, noise is bad, but complete silence is not good either. For pedestrians and people who are blind, quiet electric cars and electric bicycles can be dangerous. It is important for such vehicles to make at least some sound for safety reasons. To let the user know that he or she has taken a photo, an artificial sound is added to digital cameras. There are other cases where sound is desirable even though it is not necessary. Car manufacturers work hard so that the closing of the car door sounds just right. They want to produce a sound that produces a feeling of high quality. For designers, the goal is not silence, but getting the sound right. and most of the time, right means quieter and making less noise. Musical medicine. Boston Children's Hospital has a staff member with an unusual job. He is not a doctor, but he helps treat young patients at the hospital. He does this with his voice, a guitar, and other musical instruments. He is what is called a music therapist. For example, he helped a 4-year-old patient at the hospital who was worried about having an X-ray taken. The music therapist came to her room and they began singing a song together with his guitar. The song continued as they got on the elevator. The girl, the therapist, the girl's parents, and the nurse were all singing along. The X-ray was taken and they sang all the way back to the little girl's room. For the young patient, the X-ray was no longer a frightening experience. The idea of using music to help young patients is catching on. Psychologists say that music has the ability to reduce anxiety. It works because everyone relates to music in one way or another, and it works in different ways. If the patient is anxious about something, music with a fast tempo helps distract them. If the patient needs to relax, then music with a slower tempo helps them do that too. Some music therapists work with adults too. Adult patients write words, and the therapist and the patient try to put music to the words. As they create a song together, they talk about the meaning of the words. This is one way for the therapist to learn what the patient is worried about. Music therapists can also help adult patients learn how to relax. The speed and tone of the song that a patient and therapist sing or play can change the patient's heart rate. It can also help lower blood pressure. By using biofeedback, the patient can learn to consciously slow down his heart rate and lower his blood pressure. It's done by changing the music and enjoying it. Coming up with ideas. Some people come up with new ideas very easily. Others try hard but can't come up with any ideas at all. Is creativity something we are born with? Or is it something that we can all develop? Personality can make a difference. A person who is open to new experiences may have an advantage. He or she may be more curious and more interested in new ways of doing things. But personality isn't the only key to creativity. Many people think that the best way to solve a problem is to focus on it. However, sometimes the best way to be creative is to walk away from a problem. Just let your mind wander while you do something else. In fact, a lot of great ideas come at times of transition. These include when you are waking up in the morning, falling asleep at night, or taking a shower. By not focusing attention on a problem, you may open your mind to new ways of solving it. Psychologists studying creativity have also found that the color green may help people come up with creative ideas. One group of psychologists gave students a creativity test. The only difference was that there were different colors on the test cover page. The test cover pages were black, white, red, gray, and green. Students with green test cover pages had more creative ideas than those with other colors. Another way to improve creativity is to regularly make time for letting your mind wander. Go for a walk, look out a window, or do something completely physical. In other words, let your brain have a rest. This allows your brain to make connections that didn't occur to you when you were focusing. If you don't take a break, then your brain will not be creative. So don't be afraid to put a problem to one side for a few minutes. It may be the best way to find a good solution to the problem. Playing at work? When people talk about games, they usually think of the board games or computer games people play for entertainment. However, there is a growing movement toward using games in new ways in the classroom, the workplace, and other areas of society. This new phenomenon is called gamification. Some people used to believe that computer games had a bad effect on education. They believed that games had a bad influence on children's studies. However, scientists have found evidence that playing computer games can actually help the brain learn. Scientists have found that playing these games stimulates production of a chemical called dopamine. This chemical improves the ability to pay attention. Other research shows that the chance to gain some kind of reward increases the desire to do things. This encourages students to continue learning. By using games in the classroom, teachers can help students pay attention and stay involved. Another area where gamification has an impact is the workplace. For example, some businesses have workers compete in games to lose weight and stay healthy. Competitors have a chance of winning material rewards and encouragement from coworkers. This can motivate workers to make healthy choices in eating or to continue exercising. Gamification also helps raise productivity. Some companies use online game systems to reward people for their achievements. Others reward workers for suggesting new ideas for products. The reward is not always money or a prize. It can be a compliment from a supervisor or other workers. Being recognized by others in the workplace motivates and encourages workers. Experts have different views on the effects of gamification. Some say that it leads to unnecessary pressure and stress. Still, we see examples of gamification in areas of society people once would not have imagined. It may be necessary to evaluate the effects on a case-by-case basis. Each company, school, or organization includes different types of people, but it definitely looks like the use of games is now part of our everyday life. Creating a voice. Voice synthesizing technology has made it possible to create digital characters who can talk and sing. One advantage of such software is that anyone can use a computer to create music and words for songs. Almost anyone can become a music composer and producer. Some people add animated images to their original songs. They can put their own music videos on the web. Some are lucky enough to gain enough popularity to make a commercial recording. The popularity of this software has crossed national and industry borders. Hatsune Miku is the poster girl of this new technology. She is the inspiration for a manga series as well as for games and clothing. She has also attracted fans from around the world to concerts. At these concerts, 3D images are shown on a screen on a stage. This new development has stimulated networks of creators. People living in different parts of the world work together to create new songs and performances. Advanced voice synthesizing technology has gone beyond the entertainment industry. It is creating possibilities in fields such as medicine. The technology can generate natural-sounding human voices. Researchers make a database of voice samples where the pitch, tone, and speed can be changed. They can create a voice for people who have difficulties speaking. They can also give a voice to people who have lost their voice due to neurological problems. The personalized voice can be used to produce words and express feelings. This improves communication and the person's quality of life. It provides the person with a sense of individual identity. There are other ways in which voice synthesizing technology can be used. For example, it is possible to record new songs by singers who have already passed away. It is also possible to create pleasant computerized voices to give instructions over the phone. We once thought it would be a long time before humans would live together with androids that speak to us in human voices, but that reality is already here. To like or not to like. Several things are true about the tastes we like and don't like. Although people can tell you what foods they like, they are not always able to tell why they like those foods. Secondly, if people have not tried a certain kind of food, they probably think they won't like it. People often like a particular food because they have repeated exposure to it. Generally speaking, the more times you try something, the more you will like it. With young children, for example, it usually takes about 9 exposures before they begin to like something. As a person grows older, he or she learns to like more complex tastes. Consumers tend to get tired of single flavors, such as an orange drink, rather quickly. If they have one bottle, they probably will not drink a second bottle. Colas have more complex flavors, so they may drink a second bottle. Why do we choose certain kinds of foods? In a restaurant, naming is an important factor. If the menu uses Italian words in describing a dish, and we have enjoyed Italian food before, we may select that dish because of the description. In other words, it sounds good. The reason we like something is often ironic. For example, if you are in a fancy restaurant, you will think the food is better. If the wine comes from France, you will think it is better. If the food and wine are in an ordinary cafe, you may not be impressed. Mood and emotion also affect whether you like something. In the morning, cinnamon appeals to you because it reminds you of baking and warmth. This is a good way to start the day. Later in the day, you might prefer red pepper because it is active and energetic. Perhaps more than anything else, a mother's diet influences preferences of a child. For example, if a mother drinks carrot juice before her baby is born or while she is breastfeeding her baby, the baby will tend to like carrots. 3D printing. Designing new products has just become a lot easier. A designer can now use special software to make a three-dimensional, 3D, design on a computer. The computer then sends the data to a special kind of printer called a 3D printer. That printer makes a copy of the computer model with layer after layer of light-sensitive material. These materials can include liquids, plastics, titanium, and even paper. Some 3D printers use a combination of these materials. In the beginning, these printers were large and very expensive, so only companies could buy them. But now small printers are selling for lower prices, so individuals are using them in hobbies. People are using them to create things like jewelry, decorations, toys, and figures. Other people are using a computer to design unique cases for iPhones, producing copies with 3D printers, and selling those cases on the Internet. Serious amateurs use these printers to make bicycles and even guitars. A recent dramatic incident reported in the news was a case where someone created plastic guns with a printer. The guns actually worked. Various industries are already using these printers to create test parts that go into cars, airplanes, and machinery. Using a 3D printer is much cheaper than making an actual part by traditional methods. It is possible to make an item, try it out, and then redesign it and reprint it. Other methods may take several days or weeks. A 3D printer, however, makes it possible to redesign and print several times in the same day. This lets the designer make improvements very quickly. These new printers are already used to produce models of houses and buildings. They are also used to produce 3D maps of cities, mountains, and rivers. They are also beginning to be used in medical fields. With special materials, it is possible to create bones, ears, and noses to replace a broken body part. If a bone is broken, a doctor may one day print a 3D copy to replace it. Give them a hand. The human preference for using the right or left hand has long been a mystery to scientists. Wouldn't it be more natural if everyone used both hands, or if half used the right and half used the left? Actually, only 1 in 10 people are left-handed. Until the late 20th century, left-handed people suffered in various ways. In schools, chairs with desks were made to be convenient for right-handed people. Left-handed people struggled when they used these desks. Some parents and teachers forced left-handed children to change to the right hand. Sometimes these children were punished if they used their left hand for writing or eating. Fortunately, left-handedness has become more accepted. Children are usually allowed to use whichever hand they choose. Left-handed people used to struggle to use right-handed tools. Now, designers produce specially designed tools, such as knives and scissors, for people who prefer to use their left hand. In some situations, being left-handed can even be an advantage. In several sports, left-handedness seems to be an advantage. In sports such as table tennis, boxing, baseball, and basketball, right-handers are used to competing against other right-handers. When they compete against left-handers, the left-hander has the advantage of surprise. Some 30% of top-level baseball players are left-handed. Hideki Matsui and Ichiro Suzuki showed how advantageous this is when batting. It is even more of an advantage in basketball, where over half of the top players are left-handed. Being left-handed is not always an advantage, though. In golf, for example, the number of left-handed top-level players is very small. This is probably because it is hard to find left-handed golf clubs. Why is there such a strong tendency for people to be right-handed? Maybe humans learned to both cooperate and compete with one another. They cooperated by sharing tools. Therefore, it was better if most people used the same hand. But in competition, in battle, or in sports, the left-handed person had an advantage. In our world, we balance competition with cooperation, so perhaps we need a few left-handers and a larger group of right-handers. Education for what? There seems to be a gap between the jobs that people seek and the jobs that companies actually offer. The result is that job hunters cannot find work and businesses cannot find employees. This is happening around the world. Parents and teachers have long told children, follow your dreams. So, students focus first on getting into the next level of schooling and second on doing what they find interesting. Along the way, they usually do their best to avoid the difficult subjects in school, unless those subjects are on the entrance examinations. Once students get into university, they are a little bit lost. This is because they have reached their goal of passing the entrance examination. They do not have a clear idea of what to do during the next 4 years. As the third year comes around, they once again try to follow their dreams by looking for jobs at extremely competitive companies. They fill in dozens of applications and wait for a call from the company inviting them to come for an interview. That phone call rarely comes. There are jobs, however, in small and medium-sized companies. There are also jobs in the STEM fields that go unfulfilled. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Governments and businesses are making efforts to encourage students to take interest in these fields beginning in elementary school. If these efforts succeed, there will be more qualified applicants for jobs after graduation from university. For those looking for jobs in these fields, it will be easier to find jobs. For the companies, it will be easier to hire employees with a solid background. But is the real goal of university education to provide employees? Many say that one's university years should be devoted to broadening one's view of the world. Some say that students should spend more time reading a wide variety of books. Others say that students should learn how to think critically. In other words, they should focus on liberal arts so that they can develop the ability to think for themselves. University should train the individual, not train a potential employee. Have you done your homework? Textbooks at American universities are expensive. A single textbook for a science course may cost more than $100, and that is for just one course. The average student takes 4 or 5 courses, so you can imagine how much they pay for all of their textbooks. The publishers of university textbooks are always looking for new ways to present material. Publishers spend a lot of money to produce print textbooks, so each copy may be very expensive. On top of that, the information in print textbooks may become outdated very quickly. Therefore, publishers are now producing digital textbooks. They are cheaper and can be updated quickly. An increasing number of university professors are choosing these digital textbooks for their courses. This allows the major publishers to collect data from thousands of students who use their digital materials. Each publisher analyzes this data to find better ways to present material and make it more appealing. But the publishers are not the only ones who are interested in using this data. Teachers have always wanted to know whether students are reading their textbooks. Now they have a way to find out. Several publishers are offering them a special service that tells them how their students are using the textbooks. Professors can find out whether a student is skipping pages. They can find out whether a student is failing to highlight important passages in the textbook. They can even find out whether a student is taking notes. Needless to say, they also know whether a student has simply not opened the textbook at all. Some critics say that this is spying on students, but other people say that information this data provides is very important. They say it helps professors know whether an individual student is falling behind. If a student is not reading the textbook assignments, the professor can let him know that he is not doing well in the course. Some say giving this data on student textbook use to professors is a privacy issue. But digital textbooks are clearly the wave of the future. The ideal translator. The need to communicate with people in other languages is increasing rapidly. Learning a foreign language can be exciting, but it takes a lot of time and effort. It would be great to have software that would translate from one language to another. Machine translation, MT, could save a lot of time, energy, and stress. For years, companies and governments have been trying to produce such MT software. Some of these software programs are based on grammar rules. But we don't always follow these rules when we speak and write. There are also lots of exceptions. Therefore, rule-based MT is not very successful. Another variety of software is based on translations that have been done before. This matches original texts and translated texts in a database in order to decide the best fit. It takes a Japanese sentence and automatically translates it into an English sentence. The problem is how to decide which possible translation is the best one. That is hard for humans to decide, but it is even harder for machines. MT software programs have been successful with limited subject matter. One example is weather information. The vocabulary is limited and the grammar is limited. Therefore, a Japanese language weather forecast can be translated into clear English easily. But MT software has not been successful with subject matter that is unlimited. An example is the failure to correctly translate the following two sentences. The pen is in the box, and the box is in the pen. The key is that pen has several meanings. It usually means something to write with, but a pen is also a fence to keep animals in. Humans understand these sentences on the basis of experience in the real world. Context tells them that the first sentence refers to a pen-sized box, and the second sentence refers to a pen to keep pigs or sheep in. This does not mean MT is not helpful. MT can be quite helpful as a tool in the process of translating. But in the end, the human ability to think is essential in the process of translating. Speaking two languages. The human brain is amazing. From the moment a child is born, it can hear spoken words. Slowly, it begins to recognize combinations of sounds as language. Sounds of any language are okay. If the child hears Japanese, then it begins to recognize the sounds of that language. If the child hears English, then it begins to recognize the sounds of English. By the time the child reaches 9 months of age, it produces sounds from hundreds of languages. Parents respond to selected sounds, and that encourages the child to use those sounds again and again. During the first 6 years of life, the child learns about 3 new words a day. During its lifetime, that child will grow up and gradually master some 50,000 words in one language. What happens if a child has to learn 2 languages? Some researchers say bilingual kids learn faster. These kids tend to do well in school. They seem to develop social skills a little faster. These researchers think learning two languages stimulates the brain in more ways than one language does. Other researchers, however, find that bilingualism is not always beneficial. Bilingual kids understand a smaller number of words than kids using just one language. Later, they produce a smaller number of words. Perhaps parents mix words from the two languages. They may choose words they feel their children will more easily understand. One example is Japlish, a combination of Japanese and English words. There are pluses and minuses in growing up as a bilingual person. But in the long run, bilingual kids catch up with kids who speak only one language. They usually use both languages well, if not perfectly. Learning two languages early in life can also have benefits later in life. In 2013, a study was made of people who spoke one language and bilingual people in the 60 to 68-year-old age group. Both groups performed tasks with the same accuracy, but the bilinguals were faster and their brains used less energy to do the tasks. In addition, bilinguals experience age-related dementia later than people who speak only one language. Even in old age, speaking two languages has advantages.